Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to track 2 here of our second presentation for this afternoon from the Radio Amateurs of Canada for our 2022 conference. On behalf of the RAC executive, we welcome everybody here. Thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with us and hopefully gaining some information on what RAC is doing for you and some of the changes that are coming down the pipes, as you've heard from our president, Phil McBride, at our fireside chat, some of the things that are going on. Another area, a big area that we're now going to address with you is emergency, disaster, and community services. A lot of people have talked about that. And on behalf of that, we have Jason Tremblay. Jason V3JXT is a long-time background in emergency services and security. He previously volunteered with St. John's Ambulance and the Red Cross, and as an instructor and a member of the disaster services, where he's learned a lot about working with others and the critical need for great support and defined training systems. Jason is now our Community Services Officer with RAC, putting together our emergency planning nationwide from coast to coast, and working with a lot of the section managers and individual MCOM groups and ACS, Auxiliary Communication Services, which Jason will get into and talk to you a little bit more about. I'll be your moderator this afternoon, also assisting on this presentation with questions and assistance to Jason. My name's Alan Boyd, the 3AJB. I'm the RAC Vice President starting this year. And I'm also section manager for Ontario North. And I've been involved in section management and emergency communication. I'm a retired OPP officer with 35 years experience in emergency management also. So with that, without any further ado, can I just get a few nods to the head? Can everybody see the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, thumbs up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate that. So without any further ado, I'm now going to turn it over to Jason. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box there. We will have a look at them, and at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for Q&As using the raising hand and have you speak your question too. So with that, Jason, take it away, sir. I'm here to assist, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for attending today. So just to lay the groundwork to this presentation, we are talking today about the Canadian Field Organization. There is many parts, many gears that work in the field organization. It's been around for 29 years. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about working with emergency management. We're going to talk about our disaster services program, and we're going to talk about community services. So let's see. Why is this not wanting to click over? There we go. First of all, let's talk about our core, RAC itself. All right, our organization has been around for 29 years. We're a member of the International Amateur Radio Union. For those of you that are not RAC members and may be new today, RAC's main focus in Canada is the spokesperson to our government to help us maintain and sustain the amateur radio community in this country. Our spectrum, everything goes through Radio Amateurs of Canada. It's vital that if you're coming on board and you're new as an amateur or returning as an amateur, find out more about the National Society, how we help, and what our programs are, and maybe join. Our core values, now I'm not going to read all of these core values, but you'll see that in this presentation, we use this as one of our fundamentals in developing this new system that is coming out. Our core values is very important to us. The core values of those stakeholders that we'll be working with, all of this ties together because the field organization is you, the boots on the ground, working with our public, our communities, Our amateur community needs to adjust. It needs to grow. It needs to adapt. And we had to find a solid foundation, so we might as well start with the core. Our objectives, these objectives have been around for 29 years. The last one on that page clearly states to maintain a field organization. That is our role at Radio Amateurs of Canada. You can see that there's a lot of liaison between governments and working with many different levels of government, not just our national. So what you're about to see today is what the plan, or sort of a layout of what the plan is moving forward. A National Advisory Council. Some of you have probably read this. Recently, we've had approval for a full-time standing council now. I am the Community Services Officer. For many years, there has been one person that has sort of overseen our field organization in Canada. It is a job that needs to be expanded. And you heard that earlier today in the fireside chat. Even the Americans are doing a national council. This council will be made up of volunteers from across Canada, community groups dedicated to developing programs and collaborate. This is very, very important. We have to have that collaboration for us being able to move forward. And I think that this is something that we need as a national society to take advantage of at this point in time. Again, you heard this earlier. Community, strengthening the amateur community, retention, new members, all of this stuff. Our National Advisory Council will be working with local groups, provincial councils to promote, serve, and educate our local communities, our community groups, governments, everything that we need to do to reach out and promote the amateur service, the amateur community across Canada. So how does this start? Well, because everybody sort of weighs in, as our service is primarily emergencies, let's talk first about working with authorities having jurisdiction and non-government organizations. For those of you that may not know, in 2019, RAC became a founding member of the Emergency Management NGO Consortium of Canada, EMNCC. This partnership has expanded over the years. We have a lot of different partners in there. We have Red Cross, St. John Ambulance, Salvation Army, Samaritan's Purse. The only non sort of NGO that's in there is Public Safety Canada. Now, we usually meet on a quarterly basis, and it is there to do exactly what it says on your screen, provide a foundation for collaboration within NGO community. But it also helps us understanding the role amateur radio will play with Canadian emergency management, because a lot of these organizations are tied directly into emergency management. A heads up, in our next EMNCC meeting, our guest speaker will be Minister Blair, all right, who is in charge of, public safety and emergency preparedness, or part of that system now because they have split it. Part of this practice is also building partnerships, relationship building programs, both nationally and provincially, because a lot of these NGOs do function within different provinces. So being here is a very important part to moving forward and dealing with authorities having jurisdiction. Now we are looking now at advancements in training, changing in emergency management authorities, stakeholder-driven training and operational systems and support, and accountability and training evaluation programs. And I know that sounds a lot, but we'll get into it a little bit later on. And this is happening because other NGOs are doing the same thing. So after dealing with emergency management and that, we have to look at the focus that we can provide. And that is in a disaster, okay? There is a big difference between an emergency and a disaster. Emergencies are things that happen on day-to-day events. They're usually handled by emergency services, and they're very quick. Some can be fairly large, some are very quick, easy to take care of. The disaster is that one-off situation that sometimes takes a lot of resources, sometimes takes an entire country, as with the global pandemic. And I'm sure those of you tuning in from Alberta know what it's like to be living through a disaster. Our national strategy. We're now looking, We're now looking at ICS, IMS-based operational support for response team deployment. As you heard in Vince's thing, planning is very important. Two major plans across this country that deal, are solely embedded in emergency management right now is ICS, or the Incident Command System. And you'll find that in most of the Western provinces and Eastern provinces. IMS is the Incident Management System that's found here in Ontario. So there are similarities, there are a little bit of differences. We are looking at following those plans for operational support. Community response groups dedicated to local authorities having jurisdiction. Sound familiar? Yes, much similar to what we had with the ARES program, but we are looking at making some changes. We'll get into that a little bit later. Sectional qualification review committees working with authorities having jurisdiction and the National Qualification Review Board. A lot to say, but what it means is this. Moving forward to support disaster communications, the ACS program, Auxiliary Communication Services Program for Canada, is now going to try to partnership with authorities. Those authorities are going to be the ones that steer how our training works. They're also going to be the ones that sign you off on the training. So it's going to be a little bit different than in the past. It's not going to be going to the RAC webpage, downloading a manual, sitting in a classroom with that manual, tearing it apart and say, okay, who knows this, who knows that? It is going to be a strategic plan across the country to be able to provide better support to these authorities having jurisdiction. Now, again, we will be deploying under the direction of authorities having jurisdiction. There will also be categories of deployment for NGOs in accordance to memorandums of understanding. Now, I can't go into all of this right now. It will probably take me 20, 30 minutes. But what it means is this. Authorities having jurisdiction will be the ones that do the initial call out for support. ACS, as we talk about that, will be able to work with NGOs directly. And as we talk about ACS, you'll see what I mean with that. So if there is a memorandum of understanding with an ACS group, that group will deploy when that NGO goes out. All right. And you might have a CERT team, you might have Red Cross, you may have St. John Ambulance, so on and so forth. In order to achieve this functionality, somebody's got their mic unmuted. RAC is looking at putting together an ACS working group. Now, this group is going to be the authorities having jurisdiction and some NGOs that have shown some interest. We're doing it at a national level first. Now, you have to remember that we do not have a nationally structured response in Canada. Response in Canada starts at the bottom here with your local authorities and builds up. But in order to get a solid foundation and working with groups like EMNCC, by building a working group, all right, with these authorities, then we will be able to plan better. These groups will then have oversight in the training recommendations. So we will be looking at trying to do stuff in all provinces, take in the best practices of all provinces and then lay out a position training task book. So that task book will be given to the individual, and you'll be able to follow through step by step, page by page, the recommended training, and be able to be signed off by local authorities and those qualified, whether it be through NGO or municipalities, so on and so forth. So this is the point that we're at right now. We have had one meeting with this. This is, like I said, this is going to be a stakeholder-driven program. So it is going to be a bit of a change, and it's not going to happen overnight. The primary objective of this group, enhance collaboration again, cultivate a climate for cooperation, both at provincial and national levels. This is very difficult, guys. This is that show of professionalism, understanding that there is a commitment. That climate for cooperation is extremely important. Leveraging best practices. As I just said a minute ago, we want to take the best of the best from each of the provinces, put it together, and make a program that is going to be solid. So that means that if I'm in Ontario and I have to go to Alberta to assist because they're running out of people, I will have the same foundational program, same foundational training. I can show up, sit down at an incident brief, understand what they need me to do, and I'm able to do that. Doesn't matter where you are across the country, doesn't matter where you are in the province. So the oversight that the ACS will have, the ACS working group will have, is training and qualifications. Number one, for all volunteers, not just the amateur community. They will have communication planning and development for Practum. Communication planning is very, very important, but practicing and being able to do this so that we can get up to speed to what they need, they are going to have some oversight in that as well, because ultimately we are serving them. So we got here collaboration on ACS developments between stakeholders and ACS member groups within Canada. So we have been approached by a couple of NGOs that would like ACS to become part of their organization already. We have the CERT program in Niagara, and we've been talking about this with St. John Ambulance. What that means is, instead of you being a ACS member for Radio Amateurs of Canada, you'll be an ACS member for that organization. Same training, same, qualifications, so on and so forth, but there'll be other parts of training or development that you'll have to do for that organization. This is something that is adapting, it's changing, and people are looking at it, and we're getting a lot of support from it. So I'm hoping that as we build through this, and it's going to take a little bit more time, it's not going to happen overnight, we will get more and more support from stakeholders across the country.
Can I just add one thing to this?
Absolutely.
Okay, the Auxiliary Communication Service, and talking as a former Ontario Provincial Police Officer, working with a lot of former amateur radio operators and the ARES organizations, was worked extremely well over a number of years and did an extremely good job. A lot of organizations like police, fire, ambulance, EMS, first responders, and that tried to understand the concept of emergency communications, and they weren't fully aware of it. However, by turning to the term auxiliary communication services, it's just opened up a light bulb to all these services. And a lot of you will know that police services across Canada have auxiliary police services and auxiliary officers, auxiliary services in hospitals, in EMS organizations, fire, etc. So when we approach them as an auxiliary communication, not just emergency communications, but augmenting any type of communication there, they fully understand because they're already working with groups that are auxiliary. So this is a crucial stage, as Jason just mentioned to you. By changing that term, we're not taking away from what Aries did or what was happening. We're just changing the concept a little bit so that these organizations will look at us on a more professional and level route that way. So I just thought I'd add that, Jason,
Oh,
speaking
that's
from a policing perspective.
absolutely. So defining the future, as Al has just opened it up with, auxiliary communications. Well, what is it? The new ACS program will meet requirements defined under public safety's, resilient community. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but this is a new structure that has come under humanitarian aid, and a number of different countries around the world are now talking about the resilient community. The idea behind this is by empowering groups, citizens, responders, social systems that are already in place to be prepared, be ready, be trained, working together as a community, making this system work better. Our system will be made up of highly skilled volunteer radio operators. As you can see, there's no word amateur. As Al just alluded to, you will become an auxiliary communicator. All right. Our role will still be to supplement or augment communications locally, provincially, nationally with government groups or NGOs, but it is supplementing communications. You may be called in and sat down to work with a number of different professionals to do different jobs. That is part of this training. In essence, you become an integrated, unpaid member of the sponsoring agencies. Now, amateur radio, we know, have a number of different technical systems and techniques that can support many different disasters. However, today, we also have a lot of professional systems that are changing quite rapidly. So we need to change. We need to be willing to work with our professionals, work with our NGOs, and become communicators. So you may be using an amateur radio set. You may be using a satellite set. You may be doing WinLink. You may be doing a lot of different things that we're not used to doing. Is this still amateur radio? Yes, it is, because you'll always have your gear with you. But now we're filling the need that might be missing in a disaster situation. Current focus to meet all requirements of the authorities having jurisdiction. All right. That accountability is the most important thing. And as Al can probably tell you, when you're a police officer, when you're a paramedic, you're firefighters, you're constantly training. You're training for the jobs that you're doing. Something new comes up, you're training. You're working with team members, not just your team, but other teams. That is accountability. So people understand who you are, how you're going to fit in through that system. We are looking at a multi-tiered training program. All right. That training program is in development right now. It will be based in the ICS or IMS here in Ontario. It will meet requirements for authorities having jurisdictions and NGOs, but they have to give us those requirements. It's not us telling them, it's them telling us. It will develop the position training task book. All right. That is the most critical part of what we're doing for the future. It will literally be a task book, 10 to 15 pages in there. Everything you know from your first interview to your final sign off will be in that task book. Once you get it, off you go. National and provincial qualification review boards. Everything changes, as Al has just said. In the past, we had areas. Now we're looking at doing this. Organizations know that things change. Qualifications change. So we need to look at putting together a review committee. That committee needs to constantly be looking at what's coming down the pipe, what is changing, how are we going to adapt, how are we going to meet the needs of our clients. That's what these national and provincial qualification review boards are going to do. They're going to make sure that you are meeting those qualifications. And if something needs to change, we have an avenue to talk about it through the ACS working group. And we'll hopefully be able to adapt and overcome any possible problems. So what are some of the services that we are going to offer? Well, we always have offered analog communications, all right? That has always been around, and it's at the top only because everybody knows it. Digital communications are on the rise, all right? We still have DMR, Fusion, D-Star radio systems and networks, global radio emailing services. But through global emailing, we also now have GIS data collection services. These are skills that people will have to learn. Positioning and tracking, reporting, all of this stuff in digital communications is becoming seamless nowadays. It's not as fast as some of the professional services, but we still have it. And sometimes having it when the other systems aren't working is just as important. However, one of the things that is changing, one of the critical things that is changing is the last thing on this list. ACS promotes the operator. It promotes your skills as an operator. Okay. I can't walk in to an agency that has just spent $20,000 on a radio system, or a large entity like the OPP that just spent $30 million on upgrading their radio system. You walk in there and you talk to them and you say, well, I'm offering you a radio system. They're going to look at you and say, we got one. What I'm going to be able to do is say to them, I can offer you auxiliary communicators. You do with them as you see fit. Help me train them to meet those needs that you can't fill. It's like everything else. We learned this through the pandemic. We ran out of volunteers. Why? Because the systems are built around sandboxes. Each sandbox can only hold so much. And the problem is with what we saw in the pandemic, when we started scraping some of that sand off because of age, because of travel, because of this, and we started limiting that size of that sandbox, we quickly ran out of volunteers. Our job is to train operators. The skill, your skill set can go in, bridge that gap, that interoperability, or even work with the system so that a volunteer from that organization or a professional from that organization can now be deployed to the field to do the job that they're trained to do. All right. So understanding simple skills like communication planning, assisting in that. All right. Cache radio programming and distribution. I know it sounds kind of mundane, but you know something? There's always going to be that box sitting there with a whole bunch of radios in it and little T cards. Somebody's got to hand them out. So if we can assist a professional agency by handing out those radios, making sure they're programmed, making sure they're charged, that's good for us. We're on scene. We are doing things. We are building that relationship. So these are the things that we're going to be looking at promoting in 2023. The operator will come first. So that's pretty much what I'm going to cover for ACS, disaster response, and working with professionals. Okay. Our community services, all right. one thing that has sort of been missing for a few years is supporting Canadian communities. All right. So we have a field organization, and part of that field organization is community. So starting in January 2023, we're going to be looking at putting in a sectional council, much the same as what I've done at the national level and expanding that. We're going to be expanding this section. The sectional council will be empowering locals to develop and collaborate within the section. All right. That is very important. Clubs need to work with clubs. All right. And it's not just the clubs. It's people need to work. So if we get new amateurs, you get returning amateurs, we need to be able to empower them to give us ideas, give us incentives. So the sectional support will be there to do that. They will then be able to come to the national committee and report to the national committee that these suggestions are coming up. All right. This is critical in the development of our community. Now here, and it's bolded for a reason, ACS is going to be part of the sectional council, but it's also separate from the sectional council. For years, we've always had section managers bogged down with, having to know all the emergency coordinators, all this, all that, and everything else. There will be an ACS coordinator within the sectional committee. All right. His job will look over that. The section manager will run the section. Okay. That way, the one person can focus on ACS, because we've missed out on so much because we've had section managers overwhelmed with dealing with little brush fires, little this, little that. And Al can tell you from years of personal experience, some of our sections are huge. Al, when he was first involved as a section manager, had all of Ontario. Now we have 4 sections. We have it for a reason. You just can't cover everything yourself. These councils will help section managers and the section build. All right. Promotion through the sectional council, providing next steps in the development of retention of new amateurs. We've heard that a lot today. All right. It's not about going out and just getting amateurs. We know that we have a lot of amateurs that are slipping through our community's grasp because we need to improve that. We need to develop a retention plan, a next step program as to how do we keep people involved? What is the key factors? Well, you can't do that from a national side without having somebody close to the ground. And that's what these sectional councils will be able to help. Promoting and providing continuity in public education forums and social media. As we spoke today, all right, it's not just clubs anymore. It's public educational forums. Hundreds and hundreds of people have taken to the net over the past couple of years, asking questions, doing this, doing that. Sectional councils will work with communities, work with community groups, but they also have to be aware of the public educational forums and the social media developments, because there are things happening in their communities that maybe they need to engage, maybe they need to empower a development for. The next step is a critical step. Encouraging communications between local and national committees within RAC. You are the boots on the ground. We need to hear your struggles, because we can't adapt, we can't build, we can't focus on things if we don't know about them. Every once in a while you hear things, and a lot of the stuff is being said through these public educational forums or social media today. But I'm a volunteer. just like every member of RAC's executive and board. We're all volunteers. We cannot sit there 24 hours a day monitoring this stuff. So our new sectional system will be set up in a way that a little bit of work will be done by a lot more people, making things easier, connecting this community together stronger. And I hope people will appreciate that. One of the big developments over the next year, community and youth. There will be a community and youth coordinator, both at the sectional level and at the national level. All right. It'll be there to assist in operations of youth programs, but it's not just youth programs. It's in community programs too. The programs that RAC currently has in place, the current building new programs. All right. That's what the community and youth coordinator will be there for, that two-way communication. They will encourage group collaboration. So if you have groups that are, maybe you're not a member of RAC, that's fine. But you want to collaborate with groups. That's what these coordinators are going to do. Continuity in education and in club support when required. All right. There's a lot of stuff here about building community, offering next step and mentoring for the retention of new and returning amateurs. Now, we've talked about this from the fireside chat. You've heard about it. You will be hearing about it quite a bit more in the years to come. Promote education / activities. There's educational activities, but there's also activities within the amateur community that are just fun to have. You know, being able to have a club barbecue, get to know people. Okay. Very important.
I
No.
not honestly, not really, because there's too much in my head
Phil-
right now.
Hang on,
Sorry, hold on.
just a sec,
Sorry,
Phil. Can you?
I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Thank you. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Not a problem. It happens. It happens. So, radio traffic and bulletin services. Now, a lot of people are going to shake their head here, and I understand that. The focus of this coordinator will be connecting communities by radio. We have talked earlier today about quality and quantity. National and provincial traffic services are to provide alternate communications, okay? But it's also meant to help support the development of new amateur radios. There's going to be a lot more to this. One of the programs that we once had, we will be reinitiating once Alan and his counterpart are done working with ISED. All right, we will be announcing a development in a new program. It'll be coming out, but there will always be radio traffic. There will always be a service there. It's not just the NTS system of the old. It's not the new system using WinLink. Radio traffic is your provincial nets. It's everything that we talk about. Promoting this traffic is important. You heard Tim Allen say, if you were in that meeting at the beginning, the fireside chat, if we're not going to use it, we're going to lose it. Our job as a national society is to help build that interest, help people understand that radio traffic is radio traffic, whether it is, you know, a local bulletin, or if it is a local club net, a welfare net, cross communications between provinces, or even the Trans-Canada nets. These are critical. And a lot of the times we've seen repeaters that are empty. So with the new radio traffic and bulletin service, we're hoping to inspire people to get out and use the systems. And we will be inspiring people to do it right, because we will announce that in January, maybe February of next year, one of the new services that we'll be adding to this. Bulletin service. National Bulletin Support. Many of you that are RAC members probably get a RAC bulletin. Now, sectional bulletins and that, same stuff. You guys everywhere, somebody, a club, whatever, they have bulletins. What we want to be able to do is we want to combine this together. And we've been doing this for a while in Ontario. There are a couple people, I believe, in British Columbia. And it's funny because the grandfather to this is sitting here with me today, Mr. Al Boyd. He has a great bulletin manager in the north. Every week, this gentleman sits down and he pulls up the bulletins that RAC puts out, the national bulletins, a little bit of news from around the world, and it gets put into a Dropbox. Our bulletin service allows amateur radio operators like myself, if I'm an official bulletin station, to pull that up. And at the beginning of a club net or trans-provincial net, we're able to read those bulletins and give you information about what's going on locally, provincially, nationally, and even globally. We would like to expand this service, all right, build this, because we want to hear more about community. We want to hear more of what you're doing. We want you as a community to inspire others to do things. Okay, so the bulletin service is going to be a big thing starting next year. And we're hoping to get a few people trained up to do it. You will be working with our marketing director here at RAC. We will have the national system put in place. And I know here in Ontario, it's pretty good. Don't you think, Al?
Absolutely. Getting the information not only to RAC members, but non-RAC members is very crucial too. So this is what this service is going to do to get it out province and provincially, as Jason said, and nationally, so that people that aren't part of RAC will find out what some of the things RAC is doing behind the scenes and getting that information out there. So absolutely, it's a very crucial part of our plan.
And you guys have to remember one thing. Amateur radio, you can hear it on a scanner. All right. So we have a lot of people out there that still use scanners. They might be interested in radio. So why not let them have the opportunity? All right. So hopefully we will see some real growth in this over the next years to come. Bringing us all back to the most important part of all of this. In order to build this community, we need you. We need volunteers. We need people that are willing to put forth a little bit of time and help build these new programs. Help encourage people to get involved. All right, so we will be looking over the next year to fill these positions through the National Advisory Committee, the councils, and many other opportunities. So I want you to stay connected at www.rac.ca for these developments. And if you are interested or you know people that are interested, all right, please reach out to us. With that, I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to me today. Coming up next will be attracting and retaining new members. All right, it'll be a group session. There'll be some videos and everything else. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I'm going to pull down my screen now, and I believe I've got about 15 minutes, maybe not, and we'll answer some questions.
Okay, well, excellent, Jason. Thank you so much for sharing that information. I know a lot of planning has gone in there, and I speak on behalf of our executive. Our president, Phil, is here too, and myself as vice president, and all our executive and board of directors across the nation. This is one of our top priorities and concerns with field services, something that we've been bringing forward And now that we're going to deal with it, things were on the back burner for a while. Phil, I may put you on the spot. Is there any couple of comments that you want to add as our president to Jason's presentation?
I'll make it real quick because I know there are people with questions. I've
Yeah.
been watching in the chat. I'd
Yeah.
like to thank Jason and his cadre of volunteers for the tremendous, like the absolutely tremendous amount of work that has gone into the reimagining of the field organization and the role of the role of Radio Amateurs of Canada and the amateur radio service in disaster and emergency communications. I know that you always hear some people say, well, with new technology, we're not relevant anymore. And what we're being told by people in government is that is not true, for the simple reason that it's not even necessarily our equipment that and our infrastructure that we bring to the table, as Jason mentioned. It's us. It's our experience. It's someone can come to us and say, build us a network from here to here. We don't care how it works. Build it. And that's what we bring to the table more than anyone else. And by rebranding as an auxiliary service, like Alan said, this helps to bring across to professional organizations, what we can provide and in what capacity we can provide it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. And I'll pass it over to whoever has questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil. Okay, Jason, we've got a couple of questions and then we'll open it up. We've got about 6, 7, 8 minutes here, so we'll try and go through them and keep the answers short. Okay, does EMO, Emergency Management Ontario training from Canadian Emergency Preparedness Canada College and emergency services and military service count for anything still with the new ACS?
Absolutely. All right. So there was a lot of stuff that was happening in the past. We are going to be building our system around the IMS ICS system. So EMO, Emergency Management Ontario, offers the IMS program. You will need to qualify that in order to be part of ACS. So yes, it's a big part of the new program. Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. As volunteers, how are we covered in the event of liability?
I knew this was going to come. All right. ACS is designed around you becoming part of the supporting agency. All right. RAC's insurance covers you if you want to go out for field day and that kind of stuff. This is not a RAC insured program. With memorandums of understanding, with the new direction that we are taking, we are training you, an operator, to essentially be an unpaid member of another organization. So part of that will be through that memorandum of understanding that the agency will cover you. The agency will look out for your best interests while you're serving them. Okay. RAC will not be part of the management structure, the deployment structure. We are just here to train volunteers. All right. RAC is not an emergency management organization. We are the Society for Amateur Radio in Canada. Okay. So we are training operators to work with other agencies. They will cover you. Very important.
Right. Yes, if a municipality takes you on as an auxiliary service, then you'll fall under their liability insurance, basically.
I see Phil. I know he wants to say something.
Phil?
Actually, I was just responding to something, but to the knowledge has been given to me. And this is basically no matter whether you're a ham or not, if you are activated by a government, if a government comes to you and says, you need to do this, whether it's the federal, provincial, or municipal government, you are covered by whatever insurance they happen. If I'm activated by Ontario, I'm covered by WSIB, et cetera, et cetera. So, but that's a more formal thing. I think you're also talking about things like if you're doing something for the St. John's ambulance, that's when we're to start talking about insurance. And what Jason's point is, you're basically going to become you're going to be under their umbrella, and part of this training is how to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. How do we sign up for this? Do we use the existing Aries forms, or is there something new coming out?
Okay, so at this point in time, we're doing a crossover. Many of you have asked me this question over the past 2 years. RAC has just released their new webpage. All right, so over the next few months, there will be changes to the webpage, but the current volunteers that are doing Aries and everything else, you will be grandfathered in once you complete the ACS training program. All right, the training program is still in development, so you will continue to function as you are today, and we will continue to update you through the RAC webpage and through bulletins. As it comes out, the change will be seamless. You don't have to worry about running out and jumping on another this and doing that. There will be a seamless transition to the next stage.
And just to add to that, along with this, is there a clearinghouse for the latest updates and the new process on rac.ca? So I think you've answered that, Jason, with it. It does take time, as Jason mentioned, and we're looking at kicking this off in January 2023. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but this is bringing it to your attention at this point.
Al, I see Brad with his hand up there, and I know he's been
Yep.
waiting patiently.
Okay.
Maybe I can answer Brad's question.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Thank you, Al. Jason, great presentation.
Okay.
And maybe my question is too early because everything is in development.
If I can hear the question.
I'm sorry, Brad, you're freezing up. Your internet is very choppy. We're not getting your question.
Primary person that I worry about
Sorry, you say you're muted now, Brad.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Okay,
you now.
with your video off, yes, it's better.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyways, my quick question is, so right now I answer to the City of Thunder Bay's emergency manager. So when he calls us out, bang, I go into, our local group goes into action. And I mean, you might not be able to answer this, Jason. So in the future, could there be a situation where, okay, now I'm an ACS for Red Cross and they have me doing something for them communication wise, but all of a sudden the City of Thunder Bay declares an emergency. And now my the emergency management coordinator for the city is calling me to say, hey, we need you up here at our EOC. I mean, and I might just be.
Nope, I can answer your question right now for you, Brad. Real simple.
Okay.
So you are currently what we would call a community response group. You will stay with your community response group under ACS. All right. We will be deploying rapid response teams. There'll be strike teams of 5 people, and they'll be deployed within the districts. Those people will respond with Red Cross or other organizations. They may even respond to assist community response groups. And then at the last level, we will have the provincial response team, which will be a 10-man team, because in all disasters, you have to have a pitcher and a catcher when it comes to information. If you just send the pitcher out and you don't put a catcher, nobody's returning the ball to them. All right. So, Brad, okay, you will remain as a community response team. You will not be going out and doing Red Cross. Should you decide to do that, you'll resign from your community response duties and find somebody else to take that part. You can't do both.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Jason. That answers me. Thank you, Al. Back to you.
Okay, thank you.
We're at the end there.
Yeah,
Al.
we are. Yeah, I'm just going to wrap it up. So on behalf of our executive, Jason, which you're on too, thank you for your presentation this afternoon. I'm hoping it was very informative to all our members that attended here, and just what's coming down the pipes from RAC, and definitely field services. I know it's been a long time coming, and there's been a lot of work, as our president just alluded to. It's something that we at RAC take very seriously, and we're working on behind the scenes. So thank you again, Jason. If you have any further follow-up questions, Jason can certainly be reached at any time, as is myself and the president, or anyone else pertaining to the auxiliary services. So we'll be
Thank
happy.
you, everybody, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.